quarantine activity number 765. Puppet making. Well, it's not the worst, but it's not the best either. You got a little bit of a receding hairline here, buddy. Can't really move the mouth well, but... Hi. Sorry about that. Trying a new hobby during quarantine. Well, welcome back to Storytime Theatre. My name is Benny, and I am your storyteller. We are going back to our beloved classic, Peter Pan. We are now on chapter 9 of this story, which is really exciting. A quick recap on what has happened thus far. When last we left Peter and the boys and Wendy, they were attacked on Marooner's Rock, and now Peter has been stranded there because he's been wounded by Captain Hook. That's all you really need to know. It kind of left us on a cliffhanger, so I don't really know what happens to Peter after that. Let's go ahead and dive right in to chapter 9 of Peter Pan, the Neverbird. The last sounds Peter heard before he was quite alone were the mermaids retiring, one by one, to their bedchambers under the sea. Steadily the waters rose till they were nibbling at his feet. And to pass the time until they made their final gulp, he watched the only moving thing in the lagoon. He thought it was a piece of floating paper, perhaps part of the kite, and wondered idly how long it would take to drift ashore. Presently, he noticed as an odd thing that it was undoubtedly out upon the lagoon with some definite purpose, for it was fighting the tide, and sometimes winning, and when it won, Peter, always sympathetic to the weaker side, could not help clapping. It was a gallant piece of paper. It was not really a piece of paper. It was the Neverbird, making desperate efforts to reach Peter on her nest. Aww! The bird came back. The bird came back to save Peter. So sweet. I'm not gonna cry. By working her wings in a way she had learned since the nest fell into the water, she was able to some extent to guide her strange craft. But by the time Peter recognized her, she was very exhausted. She had come to save him, to give him her nest, though there were eggs in it. Rather wonder at the bird, for though he had been nice to her, he had also sometimes tormented her. I can suppose only that, like Miss Darling and the rest of them, she was melted because he had all his first teeth. Well, again, with the first teeth. If you were with us for the first chapter, you know we talked about how it's so weird that they fascinated about the fact that Peter has his first teeth. It is still weird to this day, friends. Just say the mothers liked him because he was still childlike and like a little boy. Not that he had all his first teeth. That's just weird. Weird. She called out to him what she had come for, and he called out to her what was she doing there. But of course, neither of them understood each other's language. In fanciful stories, people can talk to birds freely, and I wish for a moment I could pretend that this was one such story, and say that Peter replied intelligently to the Neverbird. But true is best, and I want to tell you only what really happened. Good narrator, man, because I want to know what truly happened. Well, not only could they not understand each other, but they forgot their manners. I want you to get into the nest, the bird called, speaking as slowly and distinctly as possible. And then you can drift ashore, but I am too tired to bring it any nearer, so you must try to swim to it. What are you quacking about? Peter answered. Why don't you let the nest drift as usual? I want you to, the bird said, and then repeated it all over again. Then Peter tried slow and distinct. "What are you quacking about?" And so on. Neverbird became irritated. They have very short tempers. "You dunderhead little jay," she screamed. "Why don't you do as I tell you?" Peter felt that she was calling him names, and at that he ventured a retort. "So are you." Then rather curiously they both snapped out the same remark. "Shut up!" Nevertheless, the bird was determined to save him, if she could, and by one last mighty effort she propelled the nest against the rock. Then up she flew, deserting her eggs, so as to making her meaning clear. Then at last he understood, and clutched the nest and waved his thanks to the bird as she fluttered overhead. It was not to receive his thanks, however, that she hung there in the sky. It was not even to get him into the nest. It was to see what he did with her eggs. There were 2 large white eggs, and Peter lifted them up and reflected. The bird covered her face with her wings, so as not to see the last of them, but she could not help peeping between her feathers. I forget whether I have told you that there was a stave on the rock, driven into it by some buccaneers long ago to mark the site of buried treasure. The children had discovered the glittering hoard, and when in mischief mood used to fling showers of diamonds and pearls and pieces of 8 to the gulls, who pounced upon them for food and then flew away, raging at the scurvy trick that had been played upon them. The stave was still there, and on it Starkey had hung his hat, watertight, with a broad brim. Peter put the eggs into his hat and set it on the lagoon. It floated beautifully. The Neverbird saw it at once what he was up to, and screamed her admiration of him. And alas, Peter crowed his agreement with her. Then he got into the nest, reared the stave in it as a mast, and hung up his shirt for a sail. At the same moment, the bird fluttered down upon the hat and once more sat snugly on her eggs. She drifted in one direction, he was borne off in another, both cheering. Hold up. So, you're telling me, not only was there treasure and like a stave, like a weapon in the rock, but there was also a hat big enough for 2 large bird eggs. How big is a Neverbird? That's a description I want. I want to know, how big is a Neverbird? If anyone knows, get down in the comments. Learn me a thing, please. Of course, when Peter landed, he beached his bark in a place where the bird could easily find it. But the hat was such a great success that she abandoned the nest. It drifted about till it went to pieces, and often Starkey came to the shore of the lagoon, and with many bitter feelings watched the bird sitting in his hat. As we shall not see her again, it may be worth mentioning here that all Neverbirds now build in that shape of nest, with a broad brim on which the youngsters can take an airing. Great were the rejoicings when Peter reached the home underground almost as soon as Wendy, who had been carried hither and thither by the kite. Everybody had adventures to tell, but perhaps the biggest adventure of all was that they were several hours late for bed. Really? Again with the bedtimes? Listen, sometimes an adventure just means you gotta bend the rules, and when you bend the rules, that means bedtime's gotta go, you know? This so inflated them that they did very dodgy things to get staying up still longer, such as demanding bandages. But Wendy thought glorying in having them all home safe and sound, was scandalized by the lateness of the hour, and cried, "To bed, to bed, to bed, to bed," in a voice that had to be obeyed. The next day, however, she was awfully tender, and gave out bandages to everyone, and they played till bedtime at limping about and carrying their arms in slings. And that, my friends, concludes the adventures at Mermaid Lagoon and Chapter 9 of Peter Pan. Wow. Neverbirds, man. Hopefully we see you all next time as we read Chapter 10, The Happy Home. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time. I think I'm starting to get the hang of this.